So Republicans ran on the promise to defund Planned Parenthood, $500 million a year of taxpayer money. Remember that? That was a 2016 election. Correctional Republicans haven't really tried hard to do that. That has not stopped the administration, though, from taking its own kind of action on the question. The administration is attempting to tweak Title X funding formulas to divert federal funds away from Planned Parenthood, the country's largest abortion provider. Sonia Osorio is the president of the New York chapter of the National Organization for Women. She says the real goal of defunding Planned Parenthood isn't to prevent taxpayers from funding something they abhor, abortion. It's to force women to get pregnant. Sonia Osorio joins us tonight. Sonia, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Well, Tucker, if you take away the access to abortion and you take away birth control, which is a really big issue that we've got to discuss here tonight, you are indeed forcing women to have children. Now, let's get back to your point.
Because I wonder how many people actually, but I mean, I think most of our viewers know that what you're saying is pure lunacy and dishonest, and you do too. But let's just sort of, just for fun, reverse engineer this for a second. So who is taking away the right to have an abortion? I think the law, I don't think I know because I read it, the proposed regulation change would just make it less likely that taxpayers have to pay for abortion. Is that the same as banning abortion?
Let's be really clear, and this is something, and it's really the reason, Tucker, that I wanted to come on your show tonight, because I needed to dispel this myth. People need to understand, I want all the viewers to understand, your taxpayers do not pay for abortions in this country. Taxpayers do not pay for abortions.
They don't. They don't. But they do give $500 million to the largest
your taxpayers do pay for abortions
on the content.
In the case of rape and if a woman is dying. Those are the two situations since 1977 because of the Hyde Amendment.
I mean, look, hold on. You're spewing propaganda here. It's look, we pay taxpayers.
Testing. They get reimbursed for all those other services they do, but not for abortion. But I want to take a moment to talk about what is happening.
But hold on, you've taken a lot of moments to talk. So let me just ask you one question, which is:
we've got 4 minutes.
You're for abortion. You think abortion is a constitutional right. I think the right to bear arms is, because I've read the Bill of Rights. Why shouldn't taxpayers be forced to subsidize the NRA or buy my guns?
Now, who is talking lunacy? And who is being dishonest?
Well, why is that crazy? You think taxpayers should pay for an abortion? You're giving me the moral lecture, but just answer my question. I think it's an interesting question.
I want viewers to know that 1 in 4 women in this country have an abortion.
You're not going to answer my question.
All kinds of women. I'm not answering your question, no, because it's a stupid question.
I think it's a really interesting question. Oh, because it's causing you to enlarge your mind and it hurts. I've got an opportunity to speak to your viewers, and I'm trying to speak to them. 1 in 4 women have an abortion in this country. Yeah, no,
that has gone down.
I think I get to answer the question, Sonia. It's
gone down from 1 in 3. The reason why it's gone down is because we've had teen pregnancy prevention programs that have been successful. And right now, the Trump administration wants to divert $250 million.
This is why I never like to talk to the abortion people, because they just shout.
Pregnancy programs.
Don't make me cut you off, please.
They want to divert that to abstinence-only education.
All right, Sonia, I tried. It was a good faith effort. I really tried. I hate cutting people off, but you were just too obnoxious. I'm sorry. Right here on the show, we warned you that the FAA was putting the country at risk in the way that they were hiring air traffic controllers. Now they claim they have changed. We have an update to our exclusive investigation, and that's next. In an exclusive investigation by this program, we warned you about the war on standards underway at the FAA. In the name of diversity, federal officials devalued a skills-based test for hiring, oh, no big deal, air traffic controllers, and instead implemented a biographical questionnaire whose purpose was not hiring skilled controllers. In fact, the more skills you had, the fewer points you got, perversely. But instead, the point was ensuring the hiring of people who were of the right race. It was insane, of course, dangerous, yes, and it sparked a major reaction. Now the Department of Transportation says it is ready to revise those policies in the name of public safety. Stephen Bradbury is the General Counsel of the Department of Transportation, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Bradbury, thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tucker.
So it was a pretty simple story, and I think the fix is pretty simple. Can you assure our viewers that air traffic controllers will be hired solely on the basis of relevant criteria? In other words, how good they are at air traffic controlling, and not on the basis of irrelevant criteria like their appearance.
That's right. We're making a change to no longer use that biographical assessment that the FAA has used since 2014 and that you featured on your show. I will point out that the version you focused on with the questions that you highlighted, which I agree are counterintuitive at best, was used for
Demented,
1 year.
yeah.
For 1 year in 2014. Changes were made, and a new assessment was used after 2014 with different questions, and it didn't have those questions that you had focused on. Nevertheless, in 2016, Congress prohibited the FAA from using the biographical assessment to screen applicants, more than half the applicants, for entry-level positions as trainees for air traffic control.
Okay, but hold on. Before we get, so hold on, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. You're getting the weeds here a bit, and I think it's sort of a red herring. The question is not whether or not a biographical questionnaire is used. The question is solely, is the hiring done exclusively on the basis of skills-based criteria, relevant criteria? Does a person's appearance, sexual orientation, parents' background, does that play any role in hiring at all? At all?
No,
because
it
if it
doesn't.
does, that's dangerous. No, at all.
It doesn't, and we agree with you that for hiring of trainees for the academy to be trained as air traffic controllers, you really should focus exclusively on aptitude, competence for being an excellent air traffic controller. And so we're clearing the decks, and what we're doing and what I'm announcing on your show tonight is that the FAA is no longer going to use the biographical assessment in any form, and instead is going to give all applicants for these entry-level positions the aptitude test, which is the air traffic skills assessment test, which just tests for aptitude for the characteristics of being an excellent air traffic controller. And that test is validated,
Amen.
It's been standardized, it's proctored test, and it's the same test that applicants take who are graduates of the Collegiate Training Initiative schools and who apply for the academy to be air traffic control trainees. And I think it's important, Tucker, to point out that what we're talking about is the incoming candidates for the academy, where they get trained like a boot camp for air traffic control duties. These are not people who are hired and put on the job in control towers to be air traffic controllers.
I understand.
They have to go through very rigorous training at the academy, and many of them wash out. Sometimes more than half wash out. It's rigorous. They also
Look, for our purposes,
they go through 2 to 3 years of on-the-job training as well before they can be certified as professional air traffic controllers.
Okay.
So I think that's
but look,
important
the bottom line is, hold on, wait, I'm sorry. Before we did the segment, this was still going on. So, I mean, before you take too much credit, I'm glad you made the change. But this was still going on.
A change
until
was
we shined a light on it.
Listen, I do give you an assist for helping us focus on this issue. And,
helping you focus on it. All right. Well, I'm glad you did. But I mean, I just want to be clear about that. I think you needed some light shine on it. So, Stephen, thank you very much.
I will.
I appreciate it.
I will.
Okay. Fortunately, we're out of time. Democratic mayoral candidate in Chicago trying to muster votes the old-fashioned way by handing out money in church. Details ahead. Well, in most of America, the old-fashioned political machines are dead and buried, but in the state of Illinois, they live on. Illinois is, of course, America's second most dysfunctional state. You know, the most dysfunctional, it's the biggest. Democratic mayoral candidate Willie Wilson, appeared at a Chicago church on Sunday. He began handing out bundles of cash to parishioners, ostensibly to help them pay their bills. Overall, he gave away more than $200,000. Here's the amazing thing. He says it's totally unrelated to the fact he's running for mayor. Amazing. Just a generous man. The state election board says no laws have been broken. Of course not. They're never broken in Illinois, and we wouldn't want to impugn the integrity of Illinois politicians. It does make you wonder, why is Blagojevich rotting in prison until he's old, by the way? When you've got a city like that, is Rod Blagojevich really the most dangerous person? I hope he gets a pardon, actually. That's it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 8 p.m. to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Not an easy thing to pull off in 2018 when everybody's crazy. Have a great evening. Sean Hannity is next. Sean Hannity?
Thief of world leaders' desserts. I'm not giving it up. I am
the
not.
dessert thief.
All right, we're
Don't,
gonna tell
man.
the
I
story.
hope you
By the
won't.
end of the week, I will tell the whole story. All right, Tucker, good to see you. Great show. Welcome to Hannity. It is the biggest political scandal in modern American history. The FISA warrant is now out, and yes, we on this program were right. The Trump campaign was spied on by Obama's Justice Department using Russian lies bought and paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton to obtain a FISA warrant against Trump campaign associate Carter Page, all in an attempt to rig, steal, whatever adjective you want, a presidential election. Carter Page will join us in just a moment. Now, meanwhile, the mainstream media, they could care less about any of this, as they have been peddling the American people lies, conspiracy theories, anti-Trump hate since even before Donald Trump was ever elected. Instead, they are once again in panic crisis mode over the president's push to remove top security clearances from who? Many of the former deep state Obama-era officials who propagated all these Russian lies that were found in Hillary's bought and paid for dirty dossier, and by the way, are still, to this day, politicizing and weaponizing the powerful tools of intelligence. It's all happening on fake news CNN, conspiracy TV, MSNBC. In just a moment, we will be naming names, calling out Comrade John Brennan and the leaker and liar himself, James Clapper. By the way, if you're friends with him, tell him to tune in. And also tonight, new details on how President Trump is countering the Iranian threat with a policy of, yeah, you guessed it, peace through strength. And we're going to show you how some in the media actually now seem more sympathetic to this evil regime in Iran than to our own sitting president. It's pretty pathetic. And finally, while Democrats play politics on our southern border, President Trump is calling them out in a major way today. Stay tuned. Our jam-packed, news-breaking opening monologue. Straight ahead. All right, the now infamous Clinton dirty dossier was the single key piece of evidence that was used in 4 FISA applications by the FBI in order to spy on Trump campaign associate and, of course, the president-elect and now the president, Donald Trump. Without the dossier, there would be no FISA warrant against Carter Page. He will join us in a few minutes. This is an irrefutable fact. And, of course, we all know that this dirty dossier was created by a former foreign spy, Christopher Steele, who ultimately really was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, all to dig up dirt and lies on Donald Trump. In other words, it was political op research filled with all things Russian lies that even Steele himself has admitted was totally unverified and uncorroborated. And he even said, at best, it was raw intelligence and only had a 50-50 chance of being true, most of which has now been totally debunked. And yet it was passed off to you, the American people, and FISA court judges as real, credible evidence by top FBI, DOJ officials to obtain the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign associate at the height of a presidential election in 2016. This is a national disgrace. This is an abhorrent abuse of power and very dangerous to our constitutional republic, all in an attempt to turn the full force of your government against one person and, of course, the people that support him, Donald Trump, with a vengeance. And this, by the way, all after top officials literally rigged the investigation to save Hillary Clinton from certain indictments, warranted indictments, necessary indictments, if we have equal justice under the law and equal application of our laws. So tonight, it's time we call on everybody to demand the release of all 589 pages of these FISA documents, unredact everything possible, and of course, our God-given rights as Americans are now on the line here if we are to remain a free society. Now, the mainstream media, filled with all opinion. There's no journalism on these so-called news channels. They're supposed to be investigating our government, holding them accountable, and they're nowhere to be found. The biggest story in their lives, they've totally missed it. And meanwhile, everything we've been reporting for well over a year has now been confirmed for you. Instead, you've got the media carrying water for their beloved Barack Obama. In other words, finishing the job. They did 8 consecutive years of kissing his ass. Why should they stop now? And as we speak, they are in full-on freakout mode that several former high-ranking deep state government bureaucrats, all who propagated these Russian lies found in Hillary's bought and paid for dossier, might actually lose their precious security clearances. So this week, rightly, the Trump administration announced it was literally looking to strip top secret government access from all those deep state actors you see on your screen, including Clapper and Brennan and Rice, Michael Hayden, and James Comey and Andrew McCabe. And now, predictably, Democrats and the media, they're once again peddling this move from President Trump as another, oh my gosh, earth-shattering, feign outrage moment, an unprecedented abuse of power. In other words, their typical daily Donald Trump freakout. We've got the video proof. Take a look.
The president wants to silence his critics, period. And maybe he thinks this is a way to do it. Maybe he can say, well, they don't know what they're talking about if they don't have clearance anymore.
The idea that the president would be revoking security clearance, not based on wrongdoing, just based on words, is shameful.
But I'm not comfortable with vindictiveness because to me, that's very dictator.
Well, that's his middle name.
He represents the office of the presidency of the United States. This threat sounds more like he leads Turkey or the Philippines, not like he leads the United States of America.
Let's be honest what this is about, Willie. This is an abuse of executive power. This is Erdogan's Turkey. This is not what the United States of America should be.
This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship.
Make no mistake, that's the only thing this is about, is a cowardly action of someone who is afraid of criticism.
By the way, the last guy's the biggest liar in the country. Did it ever occur to these people why a former official no longer employed by the government would still have top secret clearance? They supposedly care so much about the dangers of Russia. Hillary Clinton paid for these Russian lies in what is nothing but a disinformation propaganda campaign to manipulate the minds of the American people and steal an election. And the deep state helped her every single step of the way. Is that not abuse of power? You don't see the danger in this? And then you're seeing the media, the Democrats, sticking up for the most corrupt people, their swamp friends that abuse the power that we gave them, we the people. For example, one-time CIA Director John Brennan hates Donald Trump. He's allowed to. He's the former communist. How he ever became the CIA director is unbelievable to me. He's also currently a paid hack over a conspiracy TV, MSNBC, which is so appropriate. But during his time as the CIA director, Brennan actually leaked the contents of this dossier before the election to then Senator Harry Reid, who then subsequently alerted the public in an open letter to James Comey. Really? The CIA director? Sounds like Pravda. Sounds like the KGB. After stepping down as CIA director, John Brennan took all of his hatred publicly on cable news, getting paid, which is okay, even calling the sitting president of the United States a traitor? Really? This guy who leaked the Russian lies. What's this?
I think there's a big question, first of all, in terms of those who are on Mr. Trump's national security team, whether they can continue to serve in good conscience an individual who basically betrayed his nation. What Mr. Trump did yesterday was to betray the women and men of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, and others, and to betray the American public. And that's why I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous, because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and it needs to stop. And Mr. Trump needs to understand that there are going to be consequences for him, too.
The press needs to report what we're going to put on the screen. It says, this is CIA policy. In the case of former directors, the agency holds their security clearance and renews it every 5 years for the rest of their lives. However, that requires former CIA directors to behave like current CIA employees. Now, what you just saw, does that seem like the behavior of a current CIA employee saying what he just said, calling the president of the United States a traitor? And this no way undermines the CIA's mission? Really? What about him politicizing intelligence as an employee of NBC? That's pretty acceptable for a current CIA employee? I don't think so. And that brings us to the well-known leaker and liar himself, James Clapper. Remember, he's the former director of national intelligence, widely believed to have leaked details of the infamous dossier to CNN, where he's now employed. Fake news. And yet CNN just can't imagine why such an honorable person like him would lose his security clearance. Let's take a look.
CNN national security analyst James Clapper. And given the partisan attacks on him, I just want to take a moment and walk you through his ample nonpartisan resume. He served as director of national intelligence during the Obama administration. Before that, as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency under the first President Bush and Bill Clinton. General Clapper joined the Air Force in 1963, served 2 tours of combat during the Vietnam War, is the recipient of an Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, 2 Defense Distinguished Service Medals, and 3 Distinguished Service Medals for national intelligence.
Okay, Anderson, it was James Clapper who issued a directive that, quote, in case you want to do some real research and news on your station, when it is determined that access to classified information is no longer required, the department or agency shall terminate such access and debrief the individual. Oh, that's James Clapper's signature. He signed that in 2013. Amazing piece of information. It was Clapper who was at the center of the Obama administration's effort to after he authored and signed that, quote, memo. Unauthorized disclosures, he said, of classified information, including leaks of classified information to the media, endanger vital intelligence sources and methods, and damage international relationships. Aggressive action is required to better equip the United States government elements to prevent unauthorized disclosures. So it's clear that people like Clapper and Brennan and many other deep state sycophants, they should in no way, none of them, have any access to our government's secrets. As a matter of fact, they ought to all be under investigation because their bias is so abusive, clouded their judgment. They are the ones that stomped on the rights of the American people. They're the ones that tried to propagandize, disinform the American people, all to affect an election. And to this day, they still are. And to this day, breaking their own government policies that they signed off on. Every American tonight, you need to demand that they not only lose their special government privileges, but they need to be held accountable for their blatant abuse of power. By the way, Robert Mueller, are you watching? Do you have your people watching? Because this is your Russia collusion story. And by the way, Jeff Sessions, where are you? Has anyone seen you except for school children? All right, let's shift gears. Let's turn our attention to the hostile regime of Iran. Over the weekend, the president issued a stern warning to the rogue state, tweeting, quote, to the president of Iran, Rouhani. He said, never, ever threaten the U.S. again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. Now, per usual, this tweet set off, yes, predictable, widespread, breathless panic from your left-wing media. Shocking. Take a look.
He criticized several times Barack Obama and said, you just wait. He's going to start a war with Iran if it feels like he's on the political ropes. And so that's in his head.
With any previous president, if you'd woken up to this all-caps tweet threatening war with Iran, you'd think he probably belongs in a padded cell. But with Trump, this is kind of business as normal.
Russia just dominated the conversation for the whole week, and he was hurting. So let's distract with a new topic. And in this case, it's Iran. Let's find a new foil that maybe all of us will focus on, and we'll forget that there was a summit in Helsinki last week.
But this strengthens them for Rouhani, for the foreign minister. This makes them look tough. People are rallying around them. So this is actually strengthening the regime.
I mean, it is a classic move by President Trump to try to distract. And we've seen this time and time again. When things aren't going well, you lob a Molotov cocktail in one corner of the room and everyone runs over there. And
Now, remember, these are the same people claiming that Trump was going to cause World War III because of his tough rhetoric against Kim Jong-un, little rocket man, fire and fury, our button's bigger than yours and works. Now, despite the never-ending panic from his critics, President Trump continued his tough talk against the hostile Iranian regime. Take a look.
I withdrew the United States from the horrible, one-sided Iran nuclear deal. And Iran is not the same country anymore. That I can say. And we'll see what happens. But we're ready to make a real deal, not the deal that was done by the previous administration, which was a disaster.
All right, someone needs to remind the corrupt media Obama is gone, and the era of apology tours and appeasement is now over. No longer will the United States of America sit idly by as the Iranian regime is fighting proxy wars, chanting death to America, disrupting the entire Middle East, and funding terrorism throughout the world. And, of course, aggressively pursuing nuclear weapons and threatening all of our allies and this country. America must never allow these lunatics to develop nuclear weapons. All options must always remain on the table. And while the president puts Iran on notice, he is also focusing on a critical part of our national security right here at home. Earlier today, he had very tough words for Democrats that literally want to eliminate ICE. In other words, protection of our southern borders. Wide open borders. Are they serious? Take a look.
But Democratic politicians want to abolish ICE. They want to see open borders. Can you imagine? You know, every once in a while you'll hear something, and usually you understand, like in deal making, you always have to understand the other side. When you hear open borders, when you hear get rid of ICE, when you hear some of the things that they're proposing, it's like you can't even understand it. Can you imagine open borders? You'd have millions of people pouring into our country. Millions and millions of people. Many people that you don't want in our country. But you would have millions of people pouring into our country. The crime would be unbelievable. And they want to get rid of the crime fighter on top of everything else. Open the border and get rid of your crime fighters. You don't understand it. Nobody understands it.
All right, with the 2018 midterms just a few short months away, it's clear that Democrats in this country have no real plan to improve America. Instead, they want to regain power in order to take more and more money. In other words, they want their crumbs back. They want to take back the Trump tax cuts. They want to impeach President Trump. They want to preserve the disaster of Obamacare, open borders, stop Kavanaugh, and they obviously we have a new addition to our list. They want to kill off all these legitimate investigations into what really happened during the 2016 election, the Obama-era deep state corruption, the rigging of an election, the rigging of an investigation. Now, tonight, we have bad news for the Democrats and everyone else actively working against President Trump. Look at this Gallup poll. President Trump just hit the highest approval rating of his presidency, and according to The Hill, 3/4 of Americans will never vote for a socialist. It should be 99.9%, but we'll get to that another night. I'll say it again. This is the most important midterm elections in our lifetime. Make your voices heard. The future of this country, our rights and future as a constitutional republic are at stake. All right. Also tonight, we have a big announcement later in the show. And by the way, the Trump Cone tapes are out, and we'll be giving you the details of that in just a minute. But first, with reaction to our top story, the man at the center of it all, former Trump campaign associate, and he is the man mentioned in all 4 FISA applications. Carter Page, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Sean.
Okay. You went. You told me a lot this week. You went to Russia a lot.
Yes.
Spent years there?
Yes.
How many times after you would go there did you get debriefed by our intelligence agencies, CIA, FBI, et cetera?
I lost track of time. You know, they whenever they asked questions, I was always ready to offer.
And you love your country?
No question.
Were you ever approached to be a spy?
Never in my life, no.
How do you respond to the characterization of you in the FISA warrants?
You know, it's just a unhidden way of attacking the Trump campaign. I mean, it's very clear, particularly given, as you said, the connection with the dodgy dossier. So,
all right. So so in June of 2016, you were still a Trump campaign associate at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. You go to Moscow. Who specifically invited you to Moscow?
The university, New Economic School.
No, who? Name. I want the name.
It was the rector. So,
do you remember his name?
Shlomo Weber. He's the rector.
Shlomo Weber. Yeah. Why did Shlomo Weber invite you?
I've dealt with a lot of Russian scholars over the year. I did my PhD at University of London, and I've spoken at most of the top universities in Moscow, New Economic School, Moscow State University, the MGIMO, all of them.
Okay. So, and in all of this time, whenever your government asked to debrief you, you would tell them.
Absolutely.
Did you work for the government?
Well, I served 5 years in the U.S. Navy. Absolutely.
You know I'm not asking that question. You're smart. Did you work for our intelligence agencies?
I was always, if they had questions, I was always willing to help out.
I didn't ask if you had questions. Did you work for our intelligence agencies?
I was never paid. I was never paid for any intelligence.
Were you given directions by our intelligence agencies ever if they wanted you to do things?
No.
Never?
No.
They never, when you were on your trip, said, by the way, would you mind looking into this?
They said, there was always an understanding that I would be an open book and willing to help. I think there's so much misunderstanding, I think, as we saw in Helsinki last week, that I was always ready and willing to provide some full details whenever.
How did Christopher Steele know you were there?
It's a great question. Well, I think his piece came out after I had already left, and it had been in a few.
Who could have informed Steele of that? Because that's an important question.
We'll see.
Because of what they're saying about you, they're basically saying, well, and by the way, if you're such a bad person, why are you here on this set and not in jail?
Again, the Washington Post, they had a big leak that last June that I spent 10 hours talking to the FBI. And, again, like I mentioned, I'm always willing to talk to,
and you
our
talked to
federal
Mueller's
agents.
team?
That's according to various leaks in the New York Times and Washington Post. Last year, I supposedly did, and I won't deny that.
Is there an ongoing investigation into you, or is this just hyperbole in these FISA warrants to get to Trump?
Those are old FISA. I think the last one ended.
Rod Rosenstein signed the last one.
In June of 2017, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about that? Do you feel that they have taken away your rights? Will you sue the government?
I'm already suing the government in the Southern District of New York. I just want $1 and some honesty.
All right. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Sean.
All right, when we come back, reaction. House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes, a very big announcement, and the Trump Cohn tapes are released. That's coming up next.